Hey, what's going on, guys? So today I want to discuss something that I find myself thinking about more and more lately, and I feel like I've got something to add to the conversation, and that is just collecting. Why do we collect? What do we collect? I'm very interested in the psychology of it all, and I think social media has had an effect on collecting culture. Some of it good, some of it bad. I want to get into some of that today, so if that sounds interesting, you're definitely in the right place. I'll start with a brief history on myself as a collector. Growing up, we always had tons of VHS all over the place, and then later DVDs came along. And then much later in life, my stepdad had a huge collection of DVDs. And then I also had an aunt that I would hang out with frequently who also had a large collection. So I think being around that at a young age, growing up, I think subconsciously made me want to have my own collection one day. Fast forward to the year 2018, where I started getting more involved on Facebook groups, Instagram pages, and YouTube especially. All these things sort of inspired me to start collecting Blu-rays and just movies in general again. I'd had my own small collections throughout the years, but never anything like what I've got now. I was seeing tons and tons of really awesome collections from people that had good taste in movies, seeing all these boutique releases of movies that I'd grown up loving. It was like I had been introduced to movies again, kind of. It was like I was discovering this whole new world of physical media that I didn't know existed. I'd always appreciated movies growing up and loved movies, but it was at this point that it was solidified for me that I wanted to start my own collection, and my wallet has never been the same. So in those early days, I was pretty much just buying anything just for the sake of growing my collection. If it had an actor that I was remotely familiar with or had good scores on whatever site you use to get your scores, I was just picking up the movie. Most of those were like Dollar General titles, many of which I have since gotten rid of. My collecting space is limited, so I've gotten into the practice of being more selective and not buying some of these Dollar General titles or even a lot of like Big Lots titles, stuff like that. I'm in a constant state of just purging and curating and getting rid of things that I'll never watch again to make room for things that I actually want to have on the shelf. So that's where I'm at now, but there was a time when I was feeling very pressured to participate in sales, buy the new release from this label or that label, etc. Something that's recently become an issue for me is making the seemingly weekly decision of what movie in my collection to upgrade to 4K or to just leave on Blu-ray. This is something that just keeps happening and doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. Budgeting is something that I've also made a conscious effort to monitor. In the year 2023, January, I started making an actual physical log of every movie that I would buy and how much I would spend on it per month, and then I would make it a real effort to try to not go over a certain number per month. And I think that's had a real impact on helping me decide what to buy and what not to buy in an effort to stay within that budget. The issue of blind buying is also something that bears mentioning. Blind buying is something that's really fun and exciting for me and a lot of other collectors to find this new movie, this hidden gem that you might not have bought otherwise or ever seen otherwise if you hadn't bought it. Kino Lorber specifically is where blind buys shine for me. I've spent hours just scrolling through their website, reading plot synopsises, deciding whether to put it in the cart or not, and I've discovered tons of awesome movies this way. But I've also been burned a couple of times with more often than not, it's just a boring movie. Like, for lack of a better word, it's just a boring movie, something I'll never see myself watching again. But you take the good with the bad, so blind buying is fun. I've tried to scale back my blind buying, but I still do it here and there, just not anywhere near as much. Getting into some of the negativity that can happen in the collector space is FOMO. Social media has made it really easy for us to know what's coming out and when. The downside of this is that oftentimes, at least in my experience, I've found myself feeling pressured to buy a release, maybe not necessarily because I love it or I want to own it in my collection, but just because it's a cool steelbook, it's got a cool slipcover, everybody else is buying it, and I want to show that I bought it too and post it like on my feed. In recent years and months, I've gotten pretty much away from this practice. I buy what I want, freeing yourself of the constant need to buy every Scream Factory title, for example, or whatever your label of choice may be, and just buying the stuff that you love and plan to watch, like, the night you bring it home, I think is a much more fulfilling practice than just, you buy it, it comes in the mail, you get excited, you get that dopamine from when, the FedEx guy drops your movie off, and then you just kind of put it on the shelf. Maybe you look at it for a couple of seconds or a minute, and then just kind of go about your day. If that's what you're doing with your movies, I feel like there might be better, ways to spend your money and your time. That's just me. Now, I want to be very clear here. I'm not judging anybody who does do that. You're free to spend your money however you like, as long as you're not bankrupting yourself and your family in the name of physical media. Nobody has any right to tell you how to spend your money. That's not what I'm trying to do here. If you can afford it and you have the space, more power to you. I personally do not have the space, so as a result, my collection has been forced to kind of more accurately reflect my personal movie taste, which is something I think everybody's collection should do, quite frankly. I will say, if you do buy every single new release on Tuesday, that doesn't really tell me a whole lot about your specific movie taste, when you're just buying everything. But if you only buy 1 or 2 titles a month or a week or whatever, and you post about those titles, that really informs people, if you're interested and if you care about that sort of thing, but it informs people like, this is a movie that I really love, and I think that that's a lot more interesting when discussing movies online. Now, it doesn't matter much what I say, but I think you're doing yourself a disservice when your collection doesn't accurately reflect your tastes and you've got a ton of stuff that's just collecting dust. Let's be honest. Everybody has some movies in their collection, even me. They don't deserve to be owned, let alone even watched one time. But either through blind buying or just feeling this compulsion to buy it because it's new, we've got it and it's in our collection now. Ultimately, though, I do think that the positives outweigh any negatives. I've met a ton of cool people online that I love discussing movies with. They've got similar tastes. We discuss when certain releases are coming, rumors about releases we'd like to see. Maybe you have a friend who bought a release that you're thinking about getting, and they can kind of give you some feedback on whether or not you should get it. Like, all of these things are made possible because of things like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff that we collectors use as resources. So that stuff's all great. Like, collecting as part of a community is so much more appealing than just kind of like collecting by yourself and like not being able to share it with anyone. I think that's part of what's so fun about collecting, being able to say like, look at what I've done, for better or worse, look at what I've done. Just don't ask me what it cost. Because really, let's be honest, at the end of the day, did you really buy the movie if you didn't take a picture of it first? All jokes aside, I think it's important to discuss the negative sides of collecting when they do come up. I've made changes in how I collect over the years as, situations have changed. It's important to realize that we need to switch things up when the time comes, if the time comes, rather than just kind of, getting stuck in our ways. I'd love to hear from some of you actual collectors, probably if you're watching this, what you think of this subject, so please leave a comment down below and let's have a discussion about this topic. Again, I want to reiterate that I'm aware that everybody's situation is different, and that's what makes the conversation that much more interesting, if you ask me. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this little thought experiment. Leave a comment in the comment section, subscribe if you're into that sort of thing, and finally, take care and watch more movies.